Okay, so welcome to Yin. We will come to our mats and or wherever you're doing yoga. You know, you don't have to have a mat to do yoga. So start with the legs extended out in front of you. Let's bring the hands back behind us. So you're reclined and you're leaning back on the hands, and then you'll just close the eyes and rest here for a moment. So we're starting in stillness, starting to deepen the breath, taking a deeper inhale in through the nose, back out through the nose. Two more like that together. Deep breath in through the nose, fill all the way up, back out through the nose. Last one, deep breath in, slow breath out. Keep going on your own so you're finding your breath rhythm, which is always easier to do when we pause, when we just sit still, focus on nothing else. Listen to the sound and also just feeling it move up and down the back of the throat. You'll feel how the mind started to slow down, how your energy has started to shift, and now you're becoming ready for your first pose. So blink open the eyes, start to walk yourself forward, still staying seated, legs extended out in front of you, but you'll grab onto the back of the left thigh, open the knee out to the side, grab the foot and bring it inside the right leg, wherever it's comfortable. It could be above the knee, it could be below the knee, just see where it naturally wants to land. And I'll give you options with and without props. So first, without props, you'll just walk the hands forward, close the eyes, start to fold over this right leg. And rounding of the spine's okay. You're not going as deep as you can. So just soften it, stay way away from your edge so you can fall into the pose a little deeper. If you have blocks, you can bring blocks underneath the forearms if that seems like an appropriate height, and rest here. If you have more props on at home, like a bolster and a block, this is really nice. Taking the bolster, bringing it on top of the right leg, slide the bolster all the way up against the abdomen or blankets. And then you can take a block, maybe two, depends, on top of the blankets or the bolster, whatever you're using. And you can rest the forehead down on the block if the height seems like the right height. And you can rest here. So we're all in this with or without props in a place that feels easy. And now just start to let go. You're in the shape. Stay with the same breath you started with. Maybe close the eyes if that's comfortable for you. And as you start to soften in the pose, knowing that the purpose of our yin yoga practice is to start to get into the joints, ligaments, tendons, all the connective muscle tissue. And those areas need more time and less effort. And for some of us, we're comfortable with stillness. It's peaceful. It's a nice place for us to be, and maybe we don't get enough of it. And for some of us, it's a struggle. It's a difficult place for us to be. And it's hard for us to keep control of the mind. But the easiest way to get control of the mind is to focus on the breath. So if we can control our breath, we can begin to control the mind. And for those of us that need something to do, bringing your focus and attention to the breath is that choice. When I'm teaching in person with a room full of people, I get a unique perspective, and then I can see everyone's face in the transitions between poses. And it's fun to see how people walk into the room and how their mood and energy starts to shift pose after pose, and the look on their face when they're done at the end of class. Such a transformation. So you'll start to bring the head up. If you have props or anything on top of the leg, just bring your hands on the props. You can set them off to the side. We'll all bring the hands back behind us and extend that left leg out in front of us. So back to this shape that we started with, just recline back on the hands, close the eyes, and feel the difference in one side of the body compared to the other. So you're in that shape for a little while. We'll just let it settle. And we'll start to come into the other side. So walking the hands in so that you're seated upright, grab onto the back of the right thigh, sole the right foot inside the left leg. See where it's comfortable. If you're not using props, you can go ahead, start to fold forward, walking the hands forward, rounding the spine, letting the head and the neck go, and staying here. If you're using props, if you just have blocks on either side of the leg, maybe the forearms resting on the blocks, and you know the blocks have 3 heights, so you can bring it to wherever you want it to be. And if you're having a difficult time folding forward, you can bring the blocks to the tallest height, stay upright, and maybe you just hinge forward a little bit from the hips. Final option with bolster or a couple of stacked blankets, bring that all the way in toward the abdomen, maybe a block for the head. Rest the hands down by the sides. So not reaching for anything with the hands, just let them relax down. They're touching something, so could be props or the ground outside of the leg. If you're really bendy and you can easily grab that foot out in front of you and get the head down toward the knee, and you're not stretching the arms to do that, and that's nowhere near your edge, that could be an option. But for most of us, it isn't. And as you listen to the body, observing what it needs, also separating from it. So you're not your body's a separate thing than you, and treating it that way, taking care of it. It's the only body you'll have in this life. And we'll start to make our way back out, lifting the head, being mindful of the props if we're using them, setting them off to the side. Extend that right leg forward, hands back behind you, sitting back reclined, eyes closed, feeling the difference here. So maybe feeling a little bit more even than the last time we were in this shape. And this time we'll blink the eyes open, start to come back forward to seated, and we'll bring the soles of the feet together and the knees wide. So we did half. Now we're doing the full version of the shape. So the closer the feet are to the body, the more intense this is. So find an easy place. You can just fold forward if you don't have any props. Elbows can come out wide. You can let the head and the neck go. If you do have props, a blanket or a couple stack blankets, a bolster can be really nice on top of the feet. I bring it all the way in, so it's touching the inner thighs too. And then same thing here. You can fold forward. If you have blocks to stack, you could also figure out a height where you can rest the forehead and stay in the shape. So blocks just fill in the gaps. You don't have to have them, especially if you're on the more flexible side. But they do feel good, even if you are flexible. If you ever have that option, I'd recommend it. In a yoga studio, all that stuff's typically provided for you with good reason. We'll start to bring the head back up, making our way out of the pose, setting props off to the side if you're using them, then using the hands to bring the knees back together. Start to walk the feet forward. You're coming down onto your back, but make sure if you're using props, they're just to the sides of the mat, so they're not too far out of reach. You'll need a strap or something like it. It doesn't have to be a strap. It could even be, if you have an extra layer of clothing, a shirt, or a towel, whatever you have. But just set that off to the side, come down onto your back, bring the soles of the feet to the mat, resting here, arms down by the sides. So you're just folding forward for the first few poses. Now we're lying down on our back, and this can be a nice transition from folding forward, just feeling the whole back on the mat, back of the head, soles of the feet on the mat. You'll take your strap, you'll loop the sole of the left foot. Let's start with that leg first. Loop the sole of the left foot into the strap. Grab both ends of the strap with both hands. I like to slide the hands all the way back until my elbows and upper arms rest on the mat. This is relaxing to me, but some people like to reach up the strap, bringing the hands close to the foot. So see which one feels better in your body and which one's more relaxing. And you can have a bend in this left knee. Then the leg doesn't need to be all the way straight, especially if it's tight. You want the strap or whatever you're using to be just at the top of the arch. So right below the ball of the foot. Toes can come down toward the face on the left foot gently, so not as much as you can go. And if you're not feeling anything, you could start to bring the leg in closer to the body, and that makes it a little bit more intense. Right foot can stay where it is, just down on the ground with the leg bent. You could extend the leg out in front of you, resting the heel down on the ground. But notice if that bothers your lower back at all. Sometimes that creates tension and we want to avoid that. If that's happening, then you simply just bring the right foot back in, keeping the leg bent. Either way, you're still getting an opening in the back side of the left leg. And we're also reversing the blood flow in the left leg. So getting the blood going from the foot up the leg instead of the other way around. And you'll grab both ends of the strap with the left hand. You want to move the props if you're using them. You can just let the strap hang from the foot over to the left hip. So if you have a bolster, great, put that next to the left hip, or blankets if you're using those. Maybe a block too can go on top of the bolster. So you'll grab both ends of the strap with, and some of you might not need anything on the outside of the left hip, and that's fine. Grab both ends of the strap with the left hand. Right arm reaches out to the side. So when you reach the right arm out to the side, notice how the right shoulder, right hip, and right heel are down on the mat if that leg's extended out in front of you. You want to keep that there no matter what. turn the toes on the left foot out to the left. There's a rotation in the hip socket that we're looking for. And then you can start to let the left leg come out to the left. But remember, we don't want to feel any pulling on the inner thigh growing area. We just want to feel a nice opening on the inseam of the leg and the left hip. But right hip isn't lifting away from the mat. So if it's coming off of the ground, you're going too far with that left leg. And the props underneath the left leg, if you're using them, can be as high as you want them to be for support. If you feel like they're too high and you're not feeling anything, then you start to take away some of the props and you make it whatever height makes the most sense. Some of you won't need anything underneath that left hip or left leg. But if you're here and you're feeling like you're struggling or there's any shaking happening, start to build up the props. Bring the leg up a little bit higher and get pillows, blankets, whatever you have to stuff it between the leg, the outer left leg, and the floor underneath you. And if you don't have many options, you can play with bringing whatever you have all the way up against the left hip or bring it down closer toward the bottom of the thigh, just above the knee. Eyes can be closed or softly open, looking down the bridge of the nose. The other good reason to keep the right hip down on the mat is you start to feel a spreading across the top of the pelvis, which can feel really nice for most of us. And even across the chest with the right arm reaching out to the right. Both shoulders down. And you'll start to wiggle those left toes, press out through the left foot, and start to bring that left leg back to center. And we'll switch sides. So loop the sole of the right foot into the strap. Left foot can come down to the mat. Maybe you take the props here if you're using them and just bring them over to the right hip so you don't have to make that transition later. Grab both ends of the strap with both hands. Line up that strap with the top of the arch, bottom of the ball of the foot. And here's where you play. Maybe there's a bend in the right knee. Maybe it's straight. Maybe the foot comes in a little closer as you bring the toes down. Maybe you slide the hands all the way back or reach up closer to the foot. And we're starting with the sole of the left foot on the mat, just so we can bring more attention to the right leg without thinking about the other leg. Finding a good place for it to be in the shape. And once we get comfortable, we find a good spot, stay there. Left foot can stay where it is, or you can extend the left leg out. So left leg's already had a lot of work. Hopefully it feels a little bit more open and longer. And you'll start to grab both ends of the strap with the right hand. Adjust those props if you're using them outside the right hip. Reach the left arm out to the side. Turn the right toes out to the right. So this is how we start. Left shoulder, left hip, left heel stay down the whole time. Slowly start to extend the right leg out to the right. And figure out if your props are where you need them to be. So this might be a different place for this leg. I definitely can go lower on this side than I can on the first side. And that's common for us to be uneven. Yoga helps with that, but it's all the other activity that we do throughout our day that sometimes brings some unevenness to the body. Maybe muscle groups that we favor or areas of the body that are just a little bit stronger. And it can be side to side. Maybe you're stronger on the right side of the body versus the left. You'll start to wiggle the right toes, press out through the right leg, and start to bring the right leg back up to center. And you'll take the strap, set it off to the side, bring the knees in toward the chest. You can rock side to side a little bit, but we just had the legs extended out. So now we're bringing them in, putting a bend in the knees. And then we'll set the feet down onto the mat, roll over to whatever side you have more room on. Use the hands to bring yourself up to seated. If you have a bolster, just bring it out in front of you the wide way, or blankets if you're using them. Blocks, if you have them, just bring those toward the top of the mat so you can use them if you want to. And you want some space if you are using the bolster away from the top of the mat. So we're coming into Sphinx pose, and we'll do it with the bolster if we have one. If we don't have one, it's not a big deal, but you'll come onto your stomach, elbows go in front of the bolster, forearms in front of the bolster, and the bolster's just right underneath the upper abdomen, chest area. So bottom of the rib cage. And from here, you can stay just like this with the tops of the feet resting down on the mat, chest is reaching forward, and the bolster's helping you reach the chest forward. You could also use a block or two underneath the forehead. So you want to keep the lift of the chest. It's a matter of building the blocks so that maybe they're higher so that you can just simply rest the forehead down and still stay in the same shape. Belly hugs in a little bit, and you keep reaching the heart straight forward. And to come out, you'll start to lift the head. If you have blocks in front of you, set those off to the side, bringing the hands to the mat enough so that you can lift up, slide the bolster or blankets out from underneath you, and you'll just come down to lying on your stomach. So you can make a pillow with the hands, either resting the head straight down onto the hands, or you can turn the head to one side, whichever one feels more comfortable. So still in a slight back bend, but nowhere near as deep as Sphinx pose. This is always a good resting pose after Sphinx. You don't completely take away the back bend right away. We'll start to get into the shoulders. So body will stay the same. You'll just lift the head up. Bring this left arm out to the side. So two options. You can extend the left arm all the way out, left hand in line with the left shoulder. If you want a deeper shoulder opening, you'll bend at the elbow and just bring the hand to point forward. So you have this 90-degree angle with that left arm. And if it's too much after we put some weight on it, then just extend, you'll come out and extend the left arm out, knowing that that's a gentler way to be in the pose. I'm going to go with the bent arm and see how it goes. So turn the head to the right, walk that right hand back so it's on the mat, and rest the left side of the head down onto the mat. Feet together, so like you have one leg, and you'll start to press into this right hand to roll back onto the left shoulder. Right hand is where you have your control, and you want the head, hips, and feet to be in line to start. If it's too much for that left shoulder, you come back onto your stomach and extend the left leg out in front, or extend the left arm out to the side. If it's feeling good, see how you can soften into the pose. You don't want to be in too deep. And I'll give you some options with the right foot. So it kind of just depends on where the hips are. For a lot of us, taking that right foot and stepping it, keeping the leg straight, just stepping it back behind the left foot and letting the big toe rest, maybe ball the foot on the ground. And that kind of keeps the momentum going back toward that left shoulder. If that deepens things too much, the other option is to keep the feet stacked, or you can bring the right foot forward in front of the left foot and see if that's a good amount of support for where you want to be in the shoulder. So playing with that top foot, finding a place for it that helps bring more support to the pose. And you just close the eyes, be here. You'll start to come forward onto your stomach, and we'll switch sides. So right arm extends out to the right. Maybe you bend at the elbow, keeping the elbow in line with the shoulder, no matter where you decide to be. Feet together, bring the right side of the head down onto the mat. left hand palm down, and then we start to roll back onto this right hip, putting some weight onto the shoulder. Go slow. This can be a sensitive area of the body, and this is a big stretch and opening for the right side chest. So use that left hand to either take yourself out of the pose a little bit or maybe go a little deeper if you're not feeling anything. I know that you're here for plenty of time, so there's no need to go all the way in. Make sure the body stays long. And now you can start to play with that top foot. So maybe it goes back and you just tap the toe back behind you, or maybe it goes forward if you want a little less of an opening on the right shoulder and it's becoming too intense. Close the eyes. And start to send the breath to the right shoulder, right side chest. And you'll start to roll back onto your stomach. And we'll bring the hands down by the sides and come up to tabletop, all fours, just to come up to kneeling. So this next one will come into a twist. The shoulders are open. It would be nice if you had a bolster or blankets or a pillow in front of you. I'll give you another option if you don't have anything. So you'll bring the knees over to the right. So coming from tabletop, bring the knees over to the left. Sorry. So you're sitting on the right hip. The bolster, pillow, blankets, whatever you have, all the way up against the right hip. Bring the hands down to the mat on each side of whatever props you're using in front of you. Lengthen the heart forward so you get a long spine. Open the chest to the right and start to come down onto the bolsters. So you'll come down onto the forearms, turning the head maybe to the right if the neck's okay with that. You can flare out the elbows. If the head's not okay with it, right side of the head, rest down onto the bolster. So if you're not using any stay there if you're using props. If you're not using any props, you can just come onto your back, bring the knees over to the right, chest opens to the left, and left arm reaches out to the left. And you can gaze over the left arm if that feels good. But we're all in a twist, one way or another. And you're feeling some length in the spine as you twist. Eyes are closed, settling in. If you're in the twist with the bolster or props underneath you and the head is turned away from the knees, lift the head, turn it back the other way. So you're taking the twist away from the neck. If you're on your back, wherever you are is good. If you're on your back, starting to switch sides for your twist. If you're on a bolster or you have something underneath you and you're seated, use the hands to lift the chest and the head. You'll bring the right hand over to the left. You'll sit turning around with the bolster or props behind you, and then keep going. Bring those knees over to the other side, so over to the left, and left hand will go outside of the bolster or whatever props you're using. Legs are bent, hands on either side, lengthen the torso and the spine. Maybe start to look to the left, bringing the chest to the left, and you slowly start to come down, resting the torso on whatever's underneath you if you're in this seated, twisted version of our spinal twist. Right side of the head can be down on the bolster. If it's too much, lift the head, turn it back the other way. So there's the sequence that we played with today had some back bend and some shoulder opening right ahead of this, which is a nice sequence of poses before a twist. It can be a lot to ask of the upper body and shoulders, chest, spine, especially if they're tight. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit more open coming into this side and the twist in general. And if you have the head turned all the way around, lift it, bring it so that the left side of the head's resting down on the bolster, feeling that release in the neck. If you're on your back, just stay where you are. And if you're on a bolster, you'll start to walk the hands in, lifting the head and the chest up and turning the bolster to face the wide way on your mat, and you'll come to seated. If you're on your back and is seated in a lying down in a reclined twist, just come onto your back and hug the knees in toward the chest. If you have two blocks in a bolster, you'll take the two blocks on the highest height in front of you, and they'll be close together, like shoulder width distance apart. So you'll just bring that toward the top of the mat. You don't want them too wide because you're building a bridge. So you'll take whatever you're using as a bolster. If it is a bolster, great. Just set it on top of the blocks. And you're going to put some weight on the middle of this. So just make sure if you put some weight down, the whole thing's not going to collapse. And if it feels good and you have a good structure, then turn to one side, whatever side you can still see the screen, and bring the hips as close as you can get it to this structure without touching it, or maybe touching it lightly. And then you'll bring the legs up onto this bolster bridge that you just created. So backs of the knees are on it. You want to scoot the hips forward a little bit. You're trying to get a vertical version of the vertical length of the thighs. Come down onto your back, arms down by the sides, palms face up, close the eyes. Coming into Shavasana this way. If you're on your back, take a deep inhale, hug the knees in, and exhale, extend the legs out in front of you, coming into a traditional version of Shavasana. You'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes wherever you are. Reach the arms overhead, finding a stretch. And if your legs are elevated, starting to walk the feet in, you can just bring the feet on top of the bolster or blankets. Rolling over onto your right side, cradling the head and the arm, keeping the eyes closed. And using the hands, bringing yourself up to a seat, being mindful of props if they're around you, using them if you want to. to prop the hips up, sitting up tall, the eyes still closed. Take a deep inhale in through the nose. Let it go out of the mouth. Bring the hands together in front of you. Bow the head. Take a moment. Honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up. Blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thanks so much. Hope you had a great yin practice and a great rest of your day or evening. See you next time.